Please. I sat through Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, and Justice League. How bad could this really be? Wow. Yeah. That did not pan out. Wow. Remember Arthur Curry? Yeah, he was that bro fishman douche in Justice League. They got the guy from Game of Thrones to play him. Anyway, the internet really loves that guy. Because, he drinks beer and throws hatchets. Plus, abs. So, now he gets his own movie. I know. I was kind of shocked they actually made one of the things they'd announced for a change too. But, hey, even a broken clock's got to be right twice a day, right? Anywho, Arthur Curry is the Aquaman. A half-human, half-Atlantean, born of the forbidden love affair between the underwater queen, I think, like Queen of Atlantis, and a lighthouse keeper. And he's Tamara Morrison, she's Nicole Kidman, and Arthur is born of that forbidden love, as he tells us at great length in his narration, which goes on and on and on. Anyway, so because he'll never be safe because of her, so she has to give herself back to the sea, and Arthur grows up with just his dad. And because he's bullied as a kid and he can talk to fish, he sort of overcompensates by hitting the gym way too much. And nowadays he's protecting the seven seas from the incursions of men by mostly lifting heavy things and punching people. And apparently he's like an outcast to the Atlantean people, we're told. Like, they know about him, but they don't really accept him. Anyway, those same people are now lorded over by Patrick Wilson, who's Orm. He's Arthur's half-brother, like on his dad's side, and he's kind of an all-round despot in the making who's, kind of running around whining about wanting to unite the seven seas armies or whatever and have them march on the world of men as a sort of preemptive strike. And the only way to stop him is magic trident. No joke. Aquaman's literally about a magic trident. Like, dude already has two tridents, I think. There was one in Justice League, and now he seems to have had one from his mom as well the whole time. But this one's the magic one. This'll make him Aquaman. I'm not even kidding. He becomes Aquaman by getting a magic trident, and only then will the people accept him and allow him to assume his rightful place as King of Atlantis. Cue the clip. Anyone ever actually stop to think about what it must be like to actually work on one of these? I mean, it's got to be a real pain, right? It's got to be like a real exercise in pulling your hair out every time one of the execs fires off another one of those post-it note directives. And to be honest with you, if that really is how this whole thing seems to work, and Aquaman would kind of heavily indicate that it really is, then all you're left with is kind of another sparkling example about why this whole cinematic universe process just really cannot be planned too rigidly in advance, Like, there's stuff in this that wildly contradicts anything else you've seen this character in. So, just to make that point really succinctly clear, and this isn't plot hole thing, this is a whole this doesn't make sense thing. There's a moment about halfway through this where Jason Momoa turns to Amber Heard and just casually asks her, "What's your name, by the way?" And the thing is, like, the writers themselves didn't kind of tell us at any point before that, so it kind of feels like they forgot to ask and they're just trying to sneak it in while they've got pages to write. I know it's probably that, but it just feels like this glaring kind of plot hole of, wait, you guys had that whole thing in the last movie. You met up for a chat in a room, and it was shot and framed like it was a big deal, like you wanted us to remember it. Why do you not remember it? Anyway, it's kind of a forgettable movie, to be honest, anyway, and everything about this character seems to be the most dull, forgettable version it can be. I mean, Aquaman's hardly like a mainstream, massive success story for the DC brand. It's not like you see him on t-shirts a lot. I mean, he's kind of a character that you use mostly for ridicule purposes now, like in sitcoms and animated shows and just late-night comedies, and I mean, he's even an entire season-long gag on Entourage. I mean, they even got James Cameron involved in there. It was hilarious. I mean, this would like to be hilarious, but it's kind of got that naff DC humor where they think they're giving you like side-eye and a growl counts as like comic delivery, but it doesn't. It's mostly just dull. I mean, to be fair, this one at least hasn't got Ezra Miller in it, so it's kind of a point up just on that. The thing is, Aquaman actually having a feature film in the DCU comes with a certain very logistical problem. Namely, just how you depict an entire underwater kingdom like another world, when you've already established that this is a sort of pre-existing universe where the sun only rises for 45 minutes a morning and the colour spectrum is largely made up entirely of different hues of grey. I mean, predictably, it doesn't quite work. They've just gone for like really bright blue grading throughout this whole thing and lots of neon lights. So, you know, some of that neon poppery from Avatar. They try and liven it up with that, but it just doesn't quite work and it always feels unnecessarily silly. Especially when you've also got that added bonus of, you know, because it's meant to be underwater, they've got this effect whereby everyone just looks like they have weird floaty hair. And because none of it's ever sort of interesting or given any real depth, you kind of feel like you're watching a really crap animated movie the whole time you're sat in this. And I say that whole time because the runtime on this thing, wowzers. This is 2 hours and 23 minutes, I think, at a guess. Like, every single moment of which, I promise, is worse than that which precedes it. I mean, on the whole, it's exactly as hokey as it sounds. Like, James Wan is one of the hottest helmers in the film biz now. And he's getting to bring none of that sort of fun, tight, cohesive, sort of Fast and Furious 7 energy to it, and there's no personality to be found anywhere underneath any of all the rubble that gets left behind by the weight of all this world building and sheer stupidity that's just heaping down on this thing. I mean, to be fair, it is not Justice League bad, but it is Suicide Squad lame, and mostly in blue. Anyway, Jason Momoa's fine, he's having a good time, I guess, and why wouldn't he? But there's just really not that much in this for him to do. I mean, he just kind of shows up somewhere, gets some exposition thrown at him, and then he runs off in search of the next round. I mean, if you took away the sort of goofy design and the action set pieces, it wouldn't actually play that differently to one of those old PC point-and-click adventure games like Monkey Island. Except, you know, it would be terrible in need of having every single copy ever produced of it rounded up and buried in a landfill. Anyway, it turns out there really isn't much for Aquaman to do in a movie literally titled Aquaman. Go figure. I mean, you'd assume the whole, you know, take back the throne thing would set this up for a straight-up Arthurian epic, but actually in execution it's kind of more like an underwater Chronicles of Riddick. I mean, really, Chronicles of Riddick. But hey, you know, Amber Heard's doing her level best to try and perk it all up every chance she gets. I mean, she struggles with the material a bit, but to be fair to her, that struggle is mainly confined to the reality that she, you know, kind of has no agency to her character whatsoever, and she's kind of been written as, you know, just the girl, as these things once upon a time used to be, idiotically. But because she's got that, really the best she manages to mine out of it is this sort of king of queens dynamic, where she's the sort of put-upon smart one, and the sort of obvious love interest she's saddled with is this sort of feckless schlub who just happens to be ripped. I mean, you can make that work. Game Night pulled it off this year. I mean, I hate Billy Magnussen in most things I see him in. I thought he was great fun in there, but that was good writing. Aquaman, though, just doesn't have anywhere near the self-confidence to be sort of self-deprecating or even offer any kind of basic introspection, so just the girl is kind of what you're stuck with Amber Heard, I'm afraid. You know, just a sassy one. There's a pretty impressive sort of supporting cast sort of waiting in the wings at any given moment in this. And when they do all step forward one by one, they each get to visibly suffer at the hands of this, well, let's just call it a rather turgid display. Willem Dafoe's on absolute autopilot, like Great Wall autopilot. Patrick Wilson has not looked this visibly embarrassed in a role since that A-Team villain he played that time for Joe Carnahan. And if there's one conversation in human history that I want to be the fly on the wall during, it's the one where they pitched this to Nicole Kidman and somehow got her to agree. I mean, I think I owe the Bewitched movie kind of an apology. This is the worst thing Nicole's ever been in. This, definitely. You're off the hook, Bewitched. All is forgiven. This exists now. The whole thing is, though, nothing, literally nothing about Aquaman works. Early on in it, it sort of looks like they're going with the idea that the sense of humour is their sort of universal selling point. But then it's never actually very funny, and they seem to give up on it about the sort of halfway mark anyway. And they sort of sink it all back into this sort of depressingly warm and just perfunctory terrain that this kind of you thought they'd go for the minute they announced this to begin with. They kind of just dialed in, by the numbers ride that they sort of, hey, it's going to be hollow to begin with. I mean, the script sucks, the pacing sucks, the look of it sucks, the design doesn't work, or it doesn't feel even basically functional. It's mystifying, genuinely mystifying that anybody saw the final result of this and didn't start asking serious questions about the highest budget project you could feasibly shunt over to VOD. I mean, the first half, it just about works, to be honest. It's not got too much ambition, so it's kind of its own game to lose in that regard, but when it starts thinking of itself as a sort of bona fide action adventure, that's when it proves it's a lot less water-resistant than you'd hope. There's way too much of the whole DC brand fast punch, slow blow sort of fight style they love so much. I mean, this movie does it so often, it feels like it's buffering every time. And for all the distractions you need in a movie that's this thunderingly gormless, those really just don't cut it, to be honest. I mean, it's a star vehicle for absolutely nobody except for an FX team that just really like the look of Avatar. It's like watching something with all the pomp of like Billy Zane's The Phantom, but that being waterboarded while you throw Crayolas at it, and to be honest, the film actually makes about as much sense as that. I mean, this could have been the DCEU's Thor. Like Thor with a jaw-droppingly massive scale. I mean, imagine! But like what you get instead is like trolling a college hospital and asking the drunkest frat dude you can find to tell you the plot of Thor Ragnarok instead. I mean, it's bewilderingly stupid, but it's stupid on just about every level you can even begin to analyze it on. It's not helped by the fact that it already, I mean, 2018 already kind of feels like a contemporary take on a dated property that's just become itself outdated. And it hasn't even got the charm to sort of pull off being a throwback piece either. I mean, it feels an awful lot like it wants to be an adventure like the Brendan Fraser Mummy series, but it just can't keep its head above water on its own merits before it's desperately trying to reach out for everyone else's loftier ones. I mean, it absolutely cannot draw you in. And because it can't, the goofiness of hearing all the sort of, actual comic book stuff like, the Trident of Atlan, hearing all that never becomes more than a quirk, and because the movie's so dull, it's not even a particularly fun one either. I mean, that's a low bar to fail to reach. I mean, it's a whopping, thunderingly low 2 stars from me. It's not weaponized awful, but it's pretty lazy, it's idiotic, and, well, to be honest, you won't give a toss about any of it. But, hey, Shazam looks good! Eh? Anyway, to be fair, the more indie side this week, things are only marginally better with Lizzie, which is the surprisingly still quite obscure in the UK story of Lizzie Borden, who I will confess I know more for being on Wednesday Addams' serial killer baseball cards than I do her actual, serial killer specifics. So she's played here by Chloe Sevigny, to quote that comedy a few months ago, and this take on the story is directed by Craig McNeil, goes for a surprisingly delicate exploration of events, sort of through the prism of Lizzie's relationship with the housekeeper Bridget, who's played by Kristen Stewart here, and it's a little formulaic, it's a little bit kind of a, this was the setup, this was the aftermath, now here's what we think went down. It's kind of that, and it's not that it's not particularly interesting. I mean, the performances on their own make it pretty worthwhile. It's that it suffers some kind of the same thing in one sense as like From Hell. Like, you remember From Hell? Like, you start to like how they're handling, the real stuff, and then it just becomes kind of troublesome when they start, like, spitballing. It's pretty restrained, though, on the whole. Sevigny is particularly terrific. I thought she was great. It'd be quite tempting to have sort of over-stylized this whole movie, by the way, and gone all, like, gothic and melodramatic with it. But to be fair, Craig McNeil, the director, he doesn't do that, and the movie's all the better for it. 3 stars from me. I really liked the stuff that worked. I just didn't have an awful lot of time for the stuff that didn't. But thankfully, one side very, very dramatically outweighs the other. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, rate, and review.